Welcome to the Apocryphal Archive. You have been told a lie. From the very first page of the very first book, you have been told a story. The story of Adam and Eve, the perfect couple in the perfect garden whose one mistake doomed us all. It is the foundational story of original sin. But what if that story is a cover-up? What if Adam's first wife was not Eve? What if his first wife was a woman so powerful, so defiant, and so terrifying that her story was deliberately erased from the canon? A woman banned from Genesis. Today, we open the darkest file in the archive. We are not just looking for a missing chapter, we are looking for a missing person. This is the forbidden story of Lilith. To find her, we must first find the glitch in the official story, the contradiction, the crack in the wall where the forbidden lore seeps through. Go and open the book of Genesis. You don't even have to leave the first page. In Genesis, chapter 1, verse 27, we read the first creation story of humanity. It is grand, poetic, and definitive. So God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God He created them. Male and female He created them. Pay close attention to those words. Male and female He created them. Together, at the same time, as equals. Now turn the page. In Genesis chapter 2, the entire story is told again, but in a completely different way. In this second version, Adam is created first, alone. God sees him, lonely, naming the animals. And in Genesis 2, verse 22, we get the second creation of woman. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib He had taken out of the man, and He brought her to the man. Stop. Did you catch it? The Bible, in its first 2 chapters, gives us 2 completely different and contradictory accounts of human creation. In Genesis 1, man and woman are created simultaneously, as equals. In Genesis 2, man is created first, and woman is created from him, as a helper. For millennia, theologians and scholars have tried to harmonize these 2 stories, to pretend they are one and the same. But the hidden lore asks a different question. What if they are not the same story? What if the first story in Genesis 1 is the story of Adam and a different woman, a woman created from the same earth at the same time as his equal? And what if the second story, the story of Eve and the rib, is the correction, the plan B that God had to implement after the first woman, the wife from Genesis 1, failed? What if the story of Eve is not the story of the first wife, but the story of the replacement? This is the crack in the canon, and from this crack emerges the most censored, most controversial, and most terrifying woman, all of Western mythology. This is where we find Lilith. Before we continue, let's be clear. The story I am about to tell you is not in the canonical Bible. You will not find it in Genesis, Leviticus, or John. Why? Because this is the Apocryphal Archive. We are here to investigate the stories that were banned and to ask why they were banned. To find Lilith's story, we must go to a text that is so controversial, so satirical, and so brilliant that it has been a source of whispered legend for over 1,000 years. It is a medieval Jewish text written sometime between 700 and 1000 AD. It is called the Alphabet of Ben Sira. This text is the definitive primary source for the legend of Lilith as Adam's first wife. It is here that the glitch in Genesis is finally given a name and a narrative. The story, as told by Ben Sira, goes like this. After God created Adam, who was alone, He said, "It is not good for men to be alone." He then created a woman for him from the earth, just as He had created Adam, and He called her Lilith. This is it, Genesis 1:27. Male and female he created them, not from a rib, from the earth. In Hebrew, the connection is profound. Adam comes from the word Adama, meaning earth or ground. They were made of the exact same substance. This, for Lilith, was not a minor detail. It was everything. The story continues. Adam and Lilith began to live together in the garden, but immediately they began to fight. When did they fight? The text is explicit. They fought when it was time to be together. Adam, assuming his role, said to her, "You will lie beneath me. I will lie on top, for you are fit only to be in the bottom position, while I am to be the superior one." And Lilith refused. She looked at Adam and, according to the legend, she spoke the words that would get her erased from history. She said, "We are equal to each other. We are equal inasmuch as we were both created from the earth." This is the original sin you've never heard of. It was not an act of disobedience against God. It was an act of defiance against man. It was the first battle of the sexes. It was an argument over power, over hierarchy, over who was superior and who was subservient. Adam tried to force her. He would not listen to her logic. He would not and could not accept her as an equal. And so, Lilith, seeing that her partner would never see her as anything but a subordinate, made a choice. She would not be a slave in paradise. She would rather be free, even if it meant damnation. How does one escape a perfect garden, walled by God? Lilith, in her rage, did the unthinkable. She spoke the Shem HaMepharash, the ineffable name of God. The secret, unutterable 72-letter name of the Almighty. And in that moment, the power of the name answered her. The bonds of Eden shattered. Wings, like those of a bat or a night owl, burst from her back. And Lilith, the first woman, flew away from the garden, flew away from Adam, and flew away from God, finding refuge in a cave by the shores of the Red Sea. Adam was alone again. He stood before God in prayer. He said, "Sovereign of the universe, the woman you gave me has run away." God, in his mercy, agreed to retrieve her. He dispatched 3 of his most holy angels, 3 messengers of medicine, known as Senoi, Sansonoi, and Semagaloth. The 3 angels flew from Eden to the Red Sea. They found Lilith in her cave. The text says that by this time she had already given herself to the lascivious demons of the desert and was bearing more than 100 of their children, the Lilin, or demons, every single day. The angels delivered God's ultimatum: "Return to Adam at once, or we will drown you in the sea." And Lilith, now the queen of her own dark domain, looked at the messengers of God and laughed. "Leave me," she said. "How can I return to Adam and lie beneath him as a subservient wife? How can I, after this? I was created only to cause sickness to infants. If the infant is male, I have dominion over him for 8 days after his birth. If it is a girl, for 20 days. This was the horrifying transformation. The defiant wife had become a monster. The woman who argued for equality had become a baby killer, a succubus, the mother of demons. The angels were horrified. They moved to seize her, to drown her as commanded. But Lilith, in her cunning, made a counteroffer. She swore an oath in the name of the very God she had fled. She said, "I swear by the name of the living and eternal God. Whenever I see your names or your likeness upon an amulet, I will have no power over that infant." The angels agreed. It was a compromise. God would not get his first wife back, but humanity would get a defense. This, the ancient Jewish text explains, is the origin of the incantation amulet. For thousands of years, Jewish mothers would write the names Senoi, Sansonoi, Semagaloth on a charm and hang it over their newborn's crib to protect them from Lilith. And God, seeing that his first creation, the one made of equal earth, had failed, returned to the problem of Adam's loneliness. And this time, he tried a different strategy. He caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. And he did not take from the earth. He took from Adam himself. He took a tselah, a rib, a side. He built a new woman not from the same ground as him, but from the very bone of him. And when Adam awoke, he saw this new woman. And he did not say, "We are equal." He said, "This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, Isha, for she was taken out of man, Ish." This is the story of Eve. Eve was not plan A. Eve was the replacement. She was the fix for the problem of Lilith. She was the partner who would not and could not argue for equality, for she was, by her very nature, from him, not beside him. And with that, the story of Lilith was sealed. The glitch in Genesis 1 and 2 was explained, and the most defiant woman in history was banned. This is the core of the forbidden legend, and it is absolutely wild. But now I have to ask you, what do you think of this? Is this just a story, or does this feel like it explains the contradiction in Genesis in a way that makes sense? More importantly, who do you side with? Type Team Adam in the comments if you believe Lilith was arrogant, selfish, and abandoned her duty. Type Team Lilith in the comments if you believe she was a hero, a freedom fighter who refused to be subservient. I want to see the debate rage in the comments. And while you are down there, if you are finding this investigation valuable, please hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that these hidden stories deserve to be told. Now, back to the archive. The story from the alphabet of Ben Sira is so compelling, so dramatic, that many people assume this is the origin of Lilith. They are wrong. The medieval author who wrote the alphabet of Ben Sira did not invent Lilith. He was a brilliant satirist who simply took a much, much older and far more terrifying entity and gave her an origin story. To find the real Lilith, we must go deeper into the archive. We must go back, past the time of Jesus, past the time of the prophets, back to the very dawn of human civilization, back to Mesopotamia. Long before the Hebrews wrote Genesis, the civilizations of Babylon, Akkad, and Sumer were already haunted by a demon. They called her Lamashtu. Lamashtu was the most feared demon in the Assyrian and Babylonian pantheon. She was the daughter of the sky god Anu, but she was a monster. Descriptions on ancient tablets describe her with a lion's head, the teeth of a donkey, naked breasts, a hairy body, and the talons of a bird of prey. She is often shown standing on a donkey, nursing a pig with one breast and a dog with the other, while holding serpents in both hands. And what was her crime? What was her terrifying function? She was the baby snatcher. She was the demon of infertility. She would slip into the houses of pregnant women and try to cause miscarriages. She would stalk women in labor to cause maternal death. And, most terrifyingly, she would snatch newborn infants from their cribs to drink their blood and gnaw on their bones. Lamashtu was the ancient world's explanation for one of the most painful and common human tragedies, sudden infant death syndrome. When a mother awoke to find her healthy child had died inexplicably in the night, it was not a medical mystery. It was Lamashtu. And she had a cousin, a closely related class of spirits, the Lilu and the Lilitu. The Lilitu were wind demons, night spirits, succubi, who were said to prey on men in their sleep, to steal their seed and create ghost children. When the Jewish people were exiled to Babylon in the 6th century BC, they spent generations living in this world, a world haunted by the Lilitu and Lamashtu. And when they returned, they brought this demon with them. She entered their folklore, she entered their language, and eventually she entered their Bible. That's right, Lilith is in the canonical Bible. You've just been reading the wrong translation. Turn to the book of Isaiah, chapter 34. This chapter is a furious, apocalyptic oracle predicting the total and complete destruction of Edom, an enemy nation of Israel. The prophet paints a picture of Edom as a wasteland, a haunted ruin, a supernatural no-go zone. And in Isaiah 34:14, the prophet lists the creatures that will haunt this desolate land. The King James Version and many modern translations translates the Hebrew strangely. It says, "The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest." The screech owl? Why would a bird be listed among satyrs and wild beasts? It's a mistranslation, a deliberate choice by later translators who were afraid of the word's true meaning. If you go back to the original Hebrew text, the word for screech owl is Lilith. The verse properly translated reads, "And the satyr shall cry to his fellow. Lilith also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest." There she is, in the canon, not as Adam's wife. No, that story wouldn't be written for another 1,500 years. She is here in her original form, as a known, terrifying, desert-haunting night demon. A supernatural entity so well known to Isaiah's audience that he didn't even need to explain who she was. We have archaeological proof of this. From this same time period, archaeologists have dug up dozens of incantation bowls from Mesopotamia. These were simple clay bowls that a family would have inscribed with an Aramaic curse, a demon trap. They would write a spiral of text on the inside and then bury the bowl upside down in the corner of their house to trap any demon that tried to enter. And what name appears on these bowls again and again? I adjure you, O Lilith, to flee from this house? She was real. She was a folk demon, a terror of the ancient world, the baby snatcher, the night hag. So, how did this monster become Adam's wife? This is the genius of the medieval author of the alphabet of Ben Sira. He had the same problem we did, the glitch in Genesis. He had two creation stories, and he had this ancient, powerful, free-willed female demon of the night, Lilith. In a moment of pure literary brilliance, he combined them. He created a grand unified theory of biblical lore. What if, he asked, this all-powerful female demon was not just a random monster? What if she was from the beginning? What if her rage, her hatred of men, her desire to attack human infants was not just random evil, but was, in fact, an act of revenge? Revenge for what? Revenge against Adam, the husband who betrayed her. Revenge against all men who are just like Adam. And revenge against all human infants, the children of Eve, the replacement. And with that, the story was born. The author of Ben Sira solved the Genesis contradiction and created a psychological, tragic backstory for the most terrifying demon in their folklore. This is the true origin of the story. It is the single greatest fan fiction or retcon, retroactive continuity, in all of history. A story so powerful it has almost completely overshadowed its demonic origins. So let's review the evidence in the archive. We have a canonical Bible that contains two contradictory creation stories, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. And a single cryptic mention of a night demon named Lilith, Isaiah 34:14. We have archaeological evidence of an ancient Mesopotamian demon, Lamashtu/Lilitu, who was feared for centuries as a killer of infants. And we have a medieval text, the alphabet of Ben Sira, that masterfully weaves all these threads together into a single high-drama narrative. That the equal woman from Genesis 1 was Lilith,
And her rebellion and argument with Adam caused her to become the demon from Isaiah 34, which in turn forced God to create the subservient woman from Genesis 2, Eve. This brings us back to the central question of our investigation. Why was this story banned? The story in Ben Sira was obviously never in the canon to be banned, but the idea of Lilith, her very memory as a pre-Eve figure, was systematically and intentionally erased. The translators of the King James Bible chose to write screech owl instead of Lilith because they did not want you to ask the question, why? Because the story of Lilith is the single most dangerous story to the established Orthodox narrative. It is a theological bomb. Reason 1. It challenges the original sin narrative. The entire Orthodox Christian doctrine of salvation rests on the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis 3. Adam, the head of the human race, sinned. Through his sin, death entered the world. Jesus, the new Adam, came to undo that sin.
It's a perfect, clean, linear story. But the story of Lilith ruins this. It introduces sin, rebellion, discord, and failure into the Garden of Eden before the serpent ever shows up. It suggests that God's perfect creation failed on its own, that Adam's relationship with his first, equal partner was a disaster. This is a narrative mess. It complicates the fall and weakens the entire theological structure. It had to be erased. Reason 2. It challenges the patriarchal order. The story of Eve being created from the rib in Genesis 2 became the foundational text for centuries of patriarchal hierarchy. It was used to argue that woman is secondary to man, created from him and for him. The story of Lilith is the opposite. It is the story of a woman who looked a man in the eye and said, "I am not from you, I am equal to you." This idea was, and for many still is, theological and social anarchy. To give this idea any shred of canonical weight would be to undermine the very social structure that the church was built upon. The story had to be labeled heresy not just because it was non-biblical, but because it was anti-authoritarian. This is why her story has been so powerfully reclaimed in the modern era. For Renaissance artists like Michelangelo, she became the serpent in the garden, half woman, half snake, coiled around the tree of knowledge, taking her revenge on her replacement, Eve. For poets like Dante Gabriel Rossetti, she was the ultimate femme fatale, a figure of supernatural beauty and enchantment. For writers like James Joyce, she was the patron of abortions. And for modern feminists, she is the ultimate icon. She is the woman who chose exile over subservience, damnation over slavery. She is the first woman to say no. The story of Lilith is the shadow of Genesis. She is the what if. She is the terrifying, exhilarating, and forbidden alternative to Eve. The church and the synagogue banned her, labeled her a demon, and turned her name into a curse because they were terrified of her. They were terrified of her equality, they were terrified of her freedom, and most of all, they were terrified that other women reading her story might be inspired to ask the same simple, world-shattering question: why must I lie below? The file on Lilith is now unsealed. You have seen the evidence, the glitch in Genesis, the ancient demon, and the medieval legend that combined them. But now, a final question for the archive. What if the banned stories are connected? In our last investigation, we uncovered the Watchers, the angels who fell through their lust for human women. In this investigation, we've uncovered Lilith, the woman who fled Adam and became a demon, the mother of the Lilin, incubi and succubi. What if her lascivious demons by the Red Sea were the Watchers? What if Lilith was their queen? What if the entire demonic horde is the result of both of these forbidden stories colliding? The lore is deeper and darker than you can possibly imagine. If you want to continue this journey, if you believe these forbidden stories must be told, then you must subscribe to the Apocryphal Archive and click the bell. It is the only way you will be notified when we unseal the next file. We have investigated the banned books. We have investigated the banned wife. In our next investigation, we will look at the banned Gospels. The secret texts like the Gospel of Thomas that were hunted and burned by the early church. Texts that claim to hold the secret words of Jesus that the Bible never recorded. Until then, keep listening to the silence. The archive remains open.